Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're talking about overcoming. Everybody has a journey. Everybody has an obstacle. This young lady who's on the show today has definitely overcome a lot of obstacles. Welcome, Cristi Leyva, to the show.
Yeah, that's right.
That is a challenging name, but welcome to the show, Cristi.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get right down to it. Tell the viewers a little bit about Cristi Leyva.
So today I want to share a little bit about my journey and kind of where it started, which is in childhood, like everybody else's, right? The difference is that my childhood was it was horrible. It was not a pretty childhood. There are snippets of beauty within my childhood. I'm not going to say that, but for the most part, unfortunately, I was raped by one of my cousins in Mexico, and from the ages about 5 to 9 years old. And nobody knew. This kind of happened in the dark and secret, like it does for most kids who are abused sexually. And it was that is the reason why and who I am, the person that I am today.
What was it like growing up in your childhood? I know you mentioned the word rape at multiple times at such a young age. What was it like in your household? You guys are Mexican nationality, and that's when you mention Mexican nationality. That's a tight knit structure. For you to even say that, I can't even perceive that happening. But that is happening in all cultures, so it really doesn't matter. But it's happening in yours. What was it like in your family? What's the Mexican culture like?
Well, I love my culture. I love being brown. I love being Mexican. It's a very tight knit community. I mean, everybody's super close. The idea, I know the buzzword right now in the mental health community is boundaries, but in all actuality, growing up in a Mexican American household, there's no boundaries. Everybody just everybody's everywhere. Everyone's in everybody's business, your tias, your tios, your primos, everybody kind of just knows everybody. And within the family unit, everybody trusts everybody. It's other people that you don't trust, like I could never go to like sleepovers because it's like, oh no, we don't trust those people. But it was allowed for me to go to my own cousin's home, right? So we lived here in Sunland Park, New Mexico. That's where I grew up. And I would go on every summer. I would go and spend it with my grandma, and I would come back home for school, and the pattern would repeat for years. When my grandma would then go and visit her son in Juarez, Mexico, I would go and ask my mom if I could go spend the night with them for the weekend. So after school on Fridays, they would drive me down and I would spend my weekends with my grandma there. And that's when the abuse kind of started happening with my cousin. And, nobody really knew. And I think what made this, and I think what breaks the soul and the spirit of a person who's gone through what I've gone through is the mindset and the programming that your abuser gives you, right? Those words that you can't get out of your head and that go on a loop and a repeat,
how did the perpetrator's act begin to take place on you? Because you said it started when you was 5. Like, how did I know there was a trust because he was your cousin, but how did he actually start to bring this into your environment? Did it start out with the threats and so forth? I mean, how did he contain you to where you couldn't share this with individuals?
That's a great question. I think how most perpetrators do, right? The gaslighting of if you tell your parents, everybody's going to know how dirty you are and they're going to blame you. And if they know how dirty you are, then no one's going to love you. Nobody's going to want you. No one's going to want to have anything to do with you because you're such a dirty girl. Look at what you made me do. And it was really like, look at what you made me do. Here I am, a 5-year-old girl. Like, yeah, I really made you pull down your pants and do something that you should be doing with an adult. Right. Because that's on me. If you tell somebody, I'll kill you, you're such a dirty little girl. And so these thoughts, right, eventually just became feelings and terror. And I was constantly living in this like emotional state of, oh my God, no one's going to want me. I can't possibly tell anybody. I can't possibly tell my mom. I can't possibly tell my dad. Why? Because if I tell them, they're not going to want me anymore. Because I am dirty, because I do feel dirty, because this is all my fault. And he's going to tell them. So it was more of when that gaslighting happens, now the blame is, I put it on myself. And so it's like, I can't tell anybody. I can't let anybody know because if they know, then they're not going to want me.
What was your mom and dad like? Give us some examples of your mom and dad. You mentioned something earlier. Trauma starts in the home, starts when we're young. It manifests its ugliness in all kind of events in the home, then out of the home, and it recirculates. We call it generational curses. Were there any generational curses in your household? And if it was, how did it manifest its ugly face to what you're dealing with now?
So yeah, the concept of generational curses, right, which is extremely biblical, but actually, it just energetically makes sense. Where when I started as a history teacher, and now that I'm in school, right, genealogy plays a big role in trying to identify patterns. And so what I started doing is I started asking questions as I would heal and find out, well, why is it that my parents behaved a certain way? Why is it that this is always happening? Why is this? Why is that? And what I found out is that, my father's father was abusive physically. Verbally, I'm sure. He later changed and became a great, great man. But his father abused and raped cousins, aunts, and destroyed the souls of these women. And on my mother's side of the family, my mother was abandoned by her own mom, cheated on my grandfather with his brother, and was kind of like a really bad woman. And the man that she married, he supposedly also violated some of the family members within there. But that was something that nobody ever talked about. Nobody ever wanted to talk about, and that's the problem is that it's such a shameful thing that nobody wants to even admit that it goes on. When I told my parents, it was just a total disbelief in how they reacted.
When they did react, how old were you when you told them?
I was about 12 years old. And, when I told them, I didn't want to tell them. I didn't because I still lived with that fear of
being killed, shame, dirty.
Yeah, I still felt that shame. I still felt all of that. That programming never went away. And it didn't go away for a very long time. And sometimes I still deal with that program. I still have to tell myself, hey, I'm safe now. But it was one of those things where when I told them, I was just afraid that they weren't going to want me anymore. Because that's what my cousin told me is once somebody knows this about you, they're not going to ever want you. They're not going to ever love you. And when I told my parents, it was like this just combustion, explosiveness of anger. And why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you fight them off? Why didn't you tell anybody? Why would you continue to go back there if you knew this was happening to you? Why? And it was all me. It was all focused on me.
How many other people? That sounds like the code of silence to me. But how many other people, as you age, probably knew that this shit was going on and still didn't do nothing about it outside of your mom and dad and put you in that environment?
I think, and this was where the ultimate betrayal happened for me, is when I finally started making peace with like my mom and my dad, because I was so rebellious and I hated them for such a long time, and blamed them, not necessarily for not protecting me, but for emotionally just kind of just distancing themselves and what felt like to me emotional abandonment. Mm-hmm. But I was in my 30s and I was trying to get my grandmother to come across the border and fix her passport. And she told me, I don't know how we got into the conversation, but basically what she said was that she alluded, right? She didn't come out and say it. She alluded that she knew what was going on.
Your grandmother did?
Yes, the grandmother that I would go see.
Okay.
I know. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing because of the fact that I loved this woman. She was everything to me. I mean, I remember my mom would give me jewelry and I would just give it to her so she could pawn and get money, because we grew up very poor and my grandma was very poor. And I would give her my savings, my domingo, which is like my little domingo is like what my grandpa would give me as like money on Sundays, right? My little allowance money. And I would save it up. I would give it to her. I would do so much. And even as I got older, I would take care of her. And so to know that she didn't have the decency to know that I was crying then in the next room and taking a shower, curled up, feeling dirty, feeling abused, scared for my life, letting water just pour down me as a little girl, a 5-7-year-old little version of me. And having my cousin knock on the door, following me around. And at one point, I remember he even did it in front of, there was a large room and there was, the family was kind of a open big space. And we were watching Chuck Norris, and Chuck Norris is a huge trigger for me. And my grandma, I remember, I understood, my grandma was like, why don't you go and sleep? Go and sleep and go hang out with your cousin over there on the bed. And I was like, what? I don't want to go over there. And she was like, no, go. Don't be sangrona. Don't be so pretentious. And I remember going, and I remember that. And I just remember just dissociating to Chuck Norris.
How do you, when you go, wow, that's crazy. You get older. You're getting older. You've addressed it with your family. Mm-hmm. You're disappointed at your grandmother. For whatever reasons, the secrets are kept, but you still gotta navigate. Mm-hmm. What do you take into the next chapter of your life? You move away, or you meet guys. How do you bring this dysfunction into relationships?
Well, and this is something that I advocate for, and because I've had to learn the hard way, is you have to heal, or this doesn't, your mind, you can lie to everybody but yourself. You cannot escape your thoughts. Mm-hmm. And, Carl Jung said, what resists persists. And what I resisted, that train of thought, the more I would resist it, the more it would persist, the more I saw it on my reality. You know, many abusers experience a second round of violation much later in their life. And I was raped again when I was older. And I started manifesting all that in my life, that I'm not good enough. No one's going to love me. People are only going to see me as a sexual object.
How did you
Men
get
are going
raped
to
the
use
second
me.
time?
I'm sorry?
How did you get raped the second time? Did you put yourself in, I don't want to say put yourself in a situation, but when you say manifest, what was the conditions that led to this a second time?
Well, I was at my apartment, and I was maybe I was older, and I had used my cousin to go to a bar, so I was underage, and my boss, I was working at a telemarketing company, and one of my bosses at the time, he followed me home, and I was drunk, you know, and I thought my cousins were the ones that had dropped me off. And I thought my cousins were knocking on my door, and I could just see like a shadow. So I thought it was my cousins because it was a male shadow. And I opened the door, and it was my boss. And I was like, oh my God, but I'm so drunk that he just puts me in bed, and he just starts, you know, raping me. And I remember again, it's that whole thing where people would say, well, why didn't you push him off? Why didn't you do this? Well, because now you're triggered. Now you're disassociating. Now you're going back to when you were a little girl, and you're like, I just got to escape this. And you do what you do, and you're just escaping your mind, and you just wait till it's over.
You call law enforcement
I didn't, because who's going to believe me? No one really took it seriously when I was a little girl. And not only that, but if they did take it seriously, who was blamed? Me. So why would I now, as an adult, risk anybody doing that to me? Risk the ridicule, risk the judgment of going through something and nobody believing me and blaming me because I was drunk. Because I looked.
How do you go back to work?
I think I stopped working at that point. I stopped. I ran into him again, and typical, you know, well, you know, nothing happened, right? And it's like, yeah, nothing happened. Sure, that's what you want to tell yourself. I mean, you did want it. You did, you know, just making it sure, like, you did want this. Remember, you did. And that fear again, that fawn or flight, you know, it's just like, it just makes you freeze and makes you feel like, I'm just going to get away from this situation. I can't even deal with this situation, because as strong as I am to keep going, I was not still strong enough to say, no, boundary, you cannot treat me like this. No, boundary, you cannot rape me. You cannot treat me like crap. You cannot talk to me this way. You cannot do this. I am going to go and take authority because I have authority.
What happened next? You meet a guy.
Yeah.
You meet the guy, you get married, you have a kid, but eyesight 2020 or whatever you want to call it, seeing into the future. Why did you even go down that road into getting married? And what were some of the things that you now look back and say, damn, I shouldn't have went down that road?
Well, I don't ever want to have like regrets, right? Because if it hadn't been for me going down that road, I wouldn't have my daughter, which is like the best gift that I've ever had in my life, right? I would still do it again. I would, because not doing it would mean I wouldn't have my kid. And one of the, again, it's that mindset. No one's ever going to love me. Coping skills, you know, one of the coping skills is, you know, people pleasing, please, just allowing, anxious attachment. Please don't leave me. Let me prove to you, you know, let me prove to you I'm worthy. Let me prove to you I'm this. Tolerating things that are clearly red flags, like this person isn't going to value me. This person doesn't value me. This person doesn't care about me. This person doesn't love me. This person's not brave. He's not a good man for me, you know, and I allowed so much disrespect to occur to me because I felt like I still believed that nobody was ever going to love me. And here I was just lucky that this person wanted to love me and marry me. And growing up, I didn't have a childhood. I didn't have a childhood that I remember in a positive way because it was my purity, my innocence. It was all taken from me.
You shared,
And
you shared, you shared a part of your life during the pre-interview about your journey into your marriage with this guy, and share with the viewers some of the flags and so forth that you took into the marriage. You had your own situation, the wanting to be loved, the validation, the what if, the pleasing. What did he bring to the table? And what did you notice now that you say, wow, I shouldn't have did that?
I would say, he was just the way he allowed other people to treat me, and the way he actually viewed me, his mindset about me when we were dating. I didn't mention this story, but one time when he was in the military, we were packing him up to be deployed, and I found his journal, a little diary that he had written in, and I found what he wrote about me. And he wrote about how uncultured I was, how he didn't know why he was with somebody like me, that he always thought that he could do better. And
hold on a minute. Stop, right?
I know. That's insane, right?
When you say he said that he thought you what was his culture?
He's white. Okay. He was a white guy. So very different from me,
For money, Long Island, what's his region?
Yeah, he was from Long Island. I mean, very well educated. He went to NYU, really smart guy. And for me, he seemed like a sweet guy. He seemed like a nice guy. And I think that's just what I wanted. I wanted just somebody to be nice to me because remember, up till this point, I'm still not acting like I'm loving myself. I still haven't really started to practice self-love.
How was his family accepting you? Now, this is a dude that wrote in his journal that he could do better. He didn't know why he loved you, but he married you. How did the family accept you?
Well, imagine if you have the mindset of
family. That's the key.
Right. Well, so imagine if you have the mindset of, I don't respect this person, I can do better than this person. I'm sure his family had the same mindset. What are you? Who are you? His mom straight up would ask me, who are you? We don't even know who you are. He's never even talked about you. This is the first time we hear about you. And I'm like thinking, what are you talking about? Like, we've been living together for 2 years, and I'm the reason why he's even talking to you because I'm the one telling him, dude, you got to call your mom. You're an only child and you only talk to her, God knows, every few months. That's weird. I mean, I talk to my mom multiple times a day. And he at one point, I mean, when he was deployed and he came back, after being in Iraq and serving in his tour, we went out and planned a trip to the city, and his mom was like, he would do things like where he was just so controlled, and she didn't want to go to a restaurant because she didn't like what they would serve. And when I stuck up for him, like, hey, well, he's been in Iraq all this time, I'm sure you can find something at this restaurant that you can eat. Right. And oh my God, it was like World War III. Who do you think you are? And how dare you? And blah, blah, blah. And you're so selfish. And I'm like thinking, I'm selfish. Like, your son just got back from tour and you don't want to eat it. You can't even pretend to enjoy freaking tapas just because you don't like it. Like, to me, that was just so mind blowing because I didn't grow up that way. I mean,
were there any moments? And you got to realize, the viewers have to realize, you still haven't really addressed your situation. You're going in from one boat to the next boat to the next boat. So were there moments you walked down the aisle? Were there moments that you got cold feet or was like, I don't know if I want to do this? I mean, you got to see what's going on. It's almost like, guess who's coming to dinner? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see, they don't like you. So why even go through with it?
I think it was just, there was a point right before, because she even made a scene at the rehearsal dinner at the church.
Oh, do
And she
tell.
was huffing and puffing because I was running late. But I was like putting the sod. I wanted a really nice outdoor wedding. And so I was the one that was like going to the sod farms and with my mom at 5 a.m. and picking up sod and laying it on their land. And my ex-husband wasn't doing that. He was on Spa Little with his friends. And so I didn't even have time to shower. It looked so filthy. And, here it is, my rehearsal. I'm the bride. And she's like walking down. She's just like huffing and puffing. And I get there and she gets mad at me. Why am I late? And Christina, why are you late? All this stuff. And then she starts yelling at my grandparents, and they don't even speak English. And they're just looking at her like she's this crazy woman. And I tell my dad that night, I'm like, Daddy, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't know if I love him this enough to put up with these people in my life. And he was like, you're just getting nervous. These are nerves. Everybody has them. They live far away. They're not going to be a part of your reality. So don't even worry about them. He's a good guy. Don't worry about it. Okay.
When you see the letter after you get married and so forth, and you see the letter, when does reality set in? When do you say enough is enough?
When he left to pursue his master's degree. It started when I told him that we were pregnant, and he was very resistant to starting a family because he felt like we weren't ready. And then he was like, I'm going to go. When I finally pushed him and helped him to try to get his master's so I could show him, like, your life's not over. Like, we can still do this as a family. Like, my dad put himself through college and university with my mom's help on the side. Like, this is teamwork. We can do this together. And he was just like, no, you're going to ruin my life. And once he decided to move and he went to TCU, he was like, you're not coming with me. You are too much for me. I need to focus. I need to make sure I graduate, and you guys can't come. She's too little, and blah, blah, blah. And at that moment, I called my mom and I told her I have lost every single ounce of respect for this man. I cannot respect him as a man anymore. And he went from calling me, and I told him it's going to be over if you leave. He went from calling me every week to every few months to nothing. Wow. And we finally decided to get divorced. And he was like, I don't love you, and I've never loved you.
What's the relationship like?
But I took
between him and his daughter. What's the relationship between him and his daughter? He has a child by you. What's that like?
You know what? I know. I think it's such a horrible thing because he sees his daughter. He provides for his daughter, but his stepmother was slapped my daughter's mask off during COVID and said some things to her. And I asked my ex-husband to put a stop to it. Didn't believe my daughter, didn't believe anything. My typical ex-husband, gaslighting, whatever. And so I called, CPS, and she just never wanted to have anything to do. She doesn't want to have anything to do with my daughter till this point. She will not allow my daughter to go see and live with him. So my daughter's lived with me for 2 years now. I have full custody of my daughter.
How do you forgive yourself? How do you forgive your grandmother who came, your grandmother, the uncles, how do you move on?
And I think that you hit what is the saying? You hit the nail on the head.
The nail on the hammer. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. The self-trust, right? When we've gone through trauma, when we've gone through heartache, it's not so much the other people that we don't trust. It's ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's how could I have not seen this? Is my judgment in people so bad that I cannot recognize bad when it's right in front of me? How can I trust myself? How can I trust this brain, right? And that is the thing to overcome. So one of the worst things that people could tell me, and they would tell me this all the time, is because you don't love yourself. You don't love yourself. That's why you allow this. You don't love yourself. When you love yourself, you're going to find blah, blah, blah. Oh, I hate it. I wanted to punch people in the face when they would tell me that and I hate it. Please, people, do not tell people that. That is the worst thing that anybody could say to somebody. You don't love yourself, because trauma victims love ourselves. We do. When we're not here anymore because we have taken our lives, that is the point where the pain is just too much that we don't want to be in this reality. But what I learned through a therapist was how to heal my inner child. And so what I did with books, that I read a good book on codependency. I wish I could remember who wrote it. And there was an exercise in this book where you were to take a picture of yourself as a child and talk to yourself and imagine yourself being victimized. And imagine yourself as an adult going to that child and telling that child, you didn't deserve this. You didn't deserve this.
You have a daughter now. Before we wrap up, you have a daughter. What lessons do you bring from your trauma into the safety of your daughter?
Well, first, right? Like, if this ever happens to you, you need to tell me, and you need to tell me right away. And it's not your fault, whatever. Second is, there is no self-condemnation allowed or shame. We make mistakes, and that's okay. That's all it is, just mistakes. 2, you're good enough, because she's got her own trauma from her dad, and her stepmom. You're good enough. You're loved. Nothing is wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong by telling your mom what this person did. There's nothing wrong with that.
What are you doing now? What are you doing now for yourself? You're in school. What's your end game here? What's the end game for you?
So, because of all of this, and the biggest lesson is, how do I change all of this pain and transform it into positive energy? Mm-hmm. How do I help heal people? How do I do this? By telling my story, by being as transparent as I possibly can, and telling people, look, this is horrible stuff that happened to me. It took a lot of violent acts for me to get to a point where I had to just fall down and cry and stained pillows and feeling so shitty about myself and hating myself and hating other people and closing my heart and finally saying enough is enough. I want to love. I want peace. I want love. I want love to flow into my life. And I want love to flow into other people's lives. The foundation of our existence is love. If we can tap into that and open up our hearts, be vulnerable to say, screw it. I can get hurt again. Maybe I'll feel this way again, but I'm going to live life on my terms because I am lovable, because I do deserve love, because no one's going to kill me, because no one's going to see me as dirty.
How can the viewers reach out to you? You're now have a organization that's helping individuals. Tell me a little bit about that and how the viewers can contact you.
So I work as a mindset coach. I am almost done with my studies in clinical mental health counseling to be a licensed therapist. Until then, I'm using my experience and to be a mindset coach, to help people understand and overcome these kinds of things, to help men, teens, couples stay together. You can find me on Instagram under cl.mindsetcoach, Facebook and LinkedIn under Cristi Leyva, CRISTI Leyva. My email is cl.mindsetcoach@cristileyva.com. And I love working with people. I have clients from all over the country. I see clients over Zoom, FaceTime, and we work on self-love, self-concept. We do emotional purging, and we work on changing and reprogramming our minds to feel safe. And you know what it is? It's to feel free.
Man, Chris, I'm like overwhelmed because really your story goes a lot deeper than this. And I appreciate you at least coming on there, sharing this part of your life and being vulnerable and willing to use your story to impact and help others. Leave the viewers with that beast state of mind that you deal with every day.
I wake up and I just tell myself, this is the biggest thing for me. And I would encourage, if you've been through any sort of trauma, to remind yourself that you are safe to be free. You are safe. You're not that little girl, that little boy anymore. You are safe now. You are safe. You deserve everything that you deserve, all of the love, all of the happiness, all of the joy, all of the success that any other person does. But you are safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.